Michael Vick at BetUS.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sportsbook and casino.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a nighttime edition of Birds 365, brought to you by BetUS. Tonight, Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Monday? Eagles day 8 of practice, Johnny Mac. We're moving right along here in training camp. How you doing on this Monday evening, sir?
We made it through 50% through the 4 consecutive practices for the Philadelphia Eagles. So halfway there, halfway home.
Halfway home. What'd you see today, John? Let's get right into it. Well, first, let me welcome everybody in. We got a nighttime edition. We got a good show planned, a full 2-hour show tonight from 6 to 8 p.m. We're going to give you all the rundown on everything. We're going to tell you about our sponsor, BetUS, the newest sponsor to Birds 365. Proud to welcome them onto the network. When I welcome, look, we got a nice chat crew already in here early, just a couple minutes into the show. Mr. Perez, Joe Whip, Torian's in here, Madness is in here, CZ, Rich Nutt, we see you. Thank you all for being here. Johnny Mac, hot one today down at NovaCare Complex. What'd you see down there today, man? Just an overall recap of day 8 at practice down there at the NovaCare. What'd you see?
A little bit more even keel defense, making some plays. Big safety by Jordan Davis in a backed up period. You saw a great tackle for loss by Zach Ballin, snipping out a misdirection screen with all kinds of that eye candy everybody's looking for. Doesn't always work. Sometimes the defense figures it out, and Zach Ballin was able to do that at one point. So he had some good defensive plays. Sean Stevens getting an interception, a pick 6 in a backed up period. A good throw by Tanner McKee, though. The ball just came, hit Will Shipley between the 3 and the 9, and he just dropped it, popped in the air. But good to see the defense getting to the football, making plays a little bit. And then offensively, continued great camp for Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, which has been a theme. Johnny Wilson showing up with a big play in the red zone that got people excited. Jalen Hurts still hasn't thrown an interception. Did fumble the ball in a ball security drill, so that drew some gas from his teammates, and he quickly recovered it. But yeah, a little bit better give and take. And Vic Fangio spoke before practice that for everybody was there, they could see it wasn't a great day for the defense. So not surprised that they recovered a little bit with that ebb and flow that Nick Sirianni talks about. That's generally what happens in training camp. And it was good to see them show a little bit of life.
Good stuff there from Johnny Mac. John, we're going to dive into the offense. We're going to dive into the defense. We're even going to talk about the press conferences. We'll start with Vic, and then we'll do the player press conferences a little bit later on. But let's go there now. Let's start with the press conference from Vic Fangio. He spoke this morning before practice. What'd you hear from Vic Fangio? It's always interesting to listen to him speak, Johnny Mac. He is a breath of fresh air. That phrase really does apply to him. I love listening to him.
Well, I think the best answer today was when my buddy Brooks Gabina from The Athletic asked him about what he said last time about his analytics and not even sharing it with his disciples. He kind of asked a follow-up on that about proprietary information, and I believe Vic's answer was he could share why he thought that, and his answer was no, which is pretty much sums up Vic Fangio. And yeah, he's an interesting guy, old school guy, obviously. It's interesting to me. We had a few chuckles. At one point, I'm going to ask Nick if he shares it with him off the record to see if I can get a real answer. But it's interesting the way he handles himself and the way he does his job. And he's going to be up in the booth. So we learned that, which if you followed his trajectory, his history and his career, that's not new for him. He prefers being up in the booth to see the whole field and let the assistants handle the communication part of it. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting with Vic around, which is fun for me.
Yeah, great stuff from Vic Fangio. I thought he had some good points. He spoke again about Bryce Huff, said he's been improving in camp. So good to hear that. And all the other comments are good. I liked what he had to say about the, being up top. It's the best view. And I love what you said this morning where you're like, he doesn't care about any input coming or advice or anything. He's going to call what he wants to call. And that's Vic Fangio for you in a nutshell. So good stuff from Vic Fangio, who spoke this morning. John, let's go to the on-field stuff. We'll start on the offensive side of the football. Let's start with quarterback Jalen Hurts. Evidently, it was another good practice today for Jalen Hurts. John, what did you see from QB1 down there at training camp today for practice number 8?
Well, I think the one thing, and Vic talked about it, the quarterback is taking care of the football. So, I mean, it's been really difficult for the defense to take it away. And part of that is Jalen Hurts going the right places with the football and taking what's there, not trying to overextend himself, which was maybe an issue last season, certainly down the stretch, falling in love with the big play and that type of thing. So it's been all good. He's been very sharp throughout the summer to this point, and that hasn't changed. And that's what you want to see from really good quarterbacks. They're defined by their consistency. Not only week to week, year to year, but day to day. And you see the best example of that is in training camp. And he's had a very consistent training camp, day after day. Just, there's ups and downs, but the ups and downs are great to good instead of great to bad, good to bad, that type of thing. So that's a positive for me.
John, the question about Jalen Hurts, we talked about it a lot in the offseason. Have you learned any more, whether it's good or bad, about the way they're going to use him this year? You remember we talked about it just kind of all offseason. Are they going to turn him into something he's not? Is he going to be a quarterback that's not, accentuating his skill set of being able to run and some of those other things that Jalen brings to the offense? Have you learned any more about what you think they might do? Have they quieted any concerns maybe you might have had about them turning him into something he's not?
Yeah, they have. They're not going to give away, obviously, game plan stuff and that type of thing, but they're working on a lot of what you've seen with the quarterback run game. I've talked about the option wrinkle they brought into it with Saquon Barkley. Bunch of quarterback draws, which has been very effective for this team. So it is one of those cases where after watching the spring, which again is different because it's a passing camp, you very few 11 on 11 periods, no pads, obviously. So, you're just working on the passing game essentially. And he was dumping it over the middle a lot of interceptions, the exact opposite of what's going on now with no interceptions against Jalen Hurts. And it looked like, what are we doing here? And then as you get back to the summer, you're closer. You're not playing real football, but you're a lot closer to real football, and they're playing real football, and they're using both aspects of a skill set, which is what everybody says. Kellen Moore's a good coach, and that's what good coaches do. They build around the strengths of their best players, and Kellen seems to be doing that.
You saw some videos around on social media this week that a lot of fans are reacting to with Jalen Hurts kind of sprinting. There was one play where he rolled out and had a running play, and then there was another video of him kind of racing up the field next to Dallas Goedert. From the video perspective, it looked like Jalen was fully healthy. His wheels were completely back. Have you seen that as well, John, throughout practices, that he looks healthy? He looks 100% when he's out there on the field.
Yeah, the explosion's back. I've been talking about that since pretty much day one of camp. He looks like the juice is back from that aspect, from the running part of it, which he didn't look like that last season, even before the knee injury. From week one in New England, a lot of people were asking, what's going on with Jalen? He doesn't seem the same.
Right.
And maybe, you know, he had consecutive ankle injuries, not last year, but the 2 years prior, and he had minor surgeries, but nonetheless, and maybe it took a little bit more out of him than the Eagles and himself was letting on, because he's never going to admit he's hurt. But yeah, completely different guy this summer so far. So that's a very positive development, because he looks like the Jalen Hurts, you know, of a couple years ago, who's really explosive on top of what he can do with the power aspect of the running game.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to watch how he's progressing, during the year. I think he's going to have a big year this year, and obviously, if the legs are a part of it, it'll be interesting to see how Kellen works it in to his offense, where he spreads the ball around a lot. So we'll be watching that. John, the other question on Jalen Hurts would be, what have you seen in the non-football stuff? I know you weren't a fan of the leadership talk, and I understand your perspective on it, but have you seen anything different out of Jalen Hurts this training camp compared to ones in the past that you've covered? Is he talking more? Is he vocal? Is there anything else that you're seeing from him on the sidelines, out on the field with other players that maybe you haven't in the past?
He likes to tool around on Dom's golf cart now.
Yeah,
Having a little bit of fun with that. But no, he's the same guy. He's always been the same guy. He's the same guy when they were winning 29 of 32. The same guy when they were losing. Yeah, that's why I don't put a lot of stock in that kind of stuff. I mean, you know, the Eagles talked about, you know, people need, when things don't go right, people need someone to blame or something to blame. In the NFL, we see that with the Eagles, Brian Johnson, Sean Desai, Matt Patricia. Back in Doug Peterson's years, you know, first it was Mike Rowe, then it was Press Taylor, and you know, people need somebody to blame. And some people blame the quarterback. And the leadership wasn't like I always bring up Jason and Fletcher, because it's not two better leaders from that standpoint in the NFL, and they were both there and they couldn't figure it out. So, you know, what does it mean? What does it mean versus producing on the football field, executing on the football field? Like, give me a bunch of great players who don't like each other, and I'll take my chances against leaders. To put it bluntly.
No, I hear you. It's a good point. I mean, I appreciate the perspective, because it's not everybody's, and I think it's a point that's well taken. So I appreciate that, John. Anything else from Jalen Hurts? Not just today, but through the first 8 practices, through the first half of training camp here. Anything else that you're seeing from Jalen Hurts that we haven't talked about or that we haven't discussed today? Just that you're seeing from QB1 as we're a couple weeks in the training camp here.
No, I mean, we talk about the quarterback ad nauseum from day to day. I mean, that's the nature of being an NFL starting quarterback and a top tier NFL starting quarterback. So the microscope is always on him. He knows it. He's well aware of it. And, you know, he understands what was said about him last year. He knows it. Same guy. Because he's taught that from your guy, Nick Saban. You know, he doesn't, you know, I think there's this narrative that he doesn't hear it. He hears it, but he's one of the best at ignoring it. and he's the same guy. Um, and I don't think that's ever changing. And
No,
I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing.
that's what I was about to say. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. That's a guy we watched lead us to the Super Bowl and come within a couple plays of potentially beating Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, the latest NFL dynasty, as you can call them nowadays, with their 3 Super Bowl rings. So, it worked, and we know it worked, and we saw it with our own eyes. So, no doubt about it. John, let's continue on the offensive side of the ball. Good breakdown on Jalen Hurts there. Let's go to Devontae Smith, John. I'm hearing more. I know he's always been good. I know he's never been a question. It's not like I heard reports that he was bad ever, but I'm just hearing more. I'm seeing more about him. There's more reporters talking about him. Jalen Hurts talked about him. A.J. Brown talked about him. What have you seen from Devontae Smith in camp so far, and specifically today?
Yeah, I've called Devontae and AJ boring because they're so
They're so
good
damn good. Yeah.
from day in and day out. When I was talking about the quarterbacks and consistency, the same thing for any position, really. They're so good, you just take them for granted. In the case of Devontae, he's getting better and better. Today it was a slot against poor Reed Blankenship. Talk about a mismatch, safety against Devontae Smith. So if you can create that against other teams, you'll be cooking pretty well, I would say. So, yeah, I mean, he's just really good. It was interesting. Aaron Moorhead, the wide receivers coach, talked about him a little bit and said, and there is room to grow. There's still room to grow, and specifically brought up, his size, and he is undersized. And I think we all forget that now because it hasn't mattered that much. But both Devontae and Aaron said there are things left on the field. He's got to get better with technique, and he's got to understand people are going to try to get their hands on him at all times and take advantage of maybe the one aspect he doesn't have, which is that imposing physical nature. So he's not perfect, but he's damn good. I'll say that. And he's been having a great camp.
Good stuff from Devontae Smith. Excited to see what kind of season he has this year, John. I think it's a big year coming for Devontae Smith. He's already coming off 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard years after nearly getting 1,000 in his rookie campaign. I think he has a big year this year, Johnny Mac. One of my projections coming into the season. John, let's talk A.J. Brown. What'd you see from A.J. Brown, wide receiver 1 today?
Well, AJ's better than Devontae.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, that's best football player on the Eagles. And he's been that way basically since he's gotten here. So I always do that, best pure, but who does their job the best? And that's how I define the players when I rate the players. It's not impact, because impact, the quarterback always has the biggest impact, whether you have good, bad, or indifferent.
Right.
A bad quarterback has the most impact on his team.
Yeah, impact is a sliding scale based on your position.
Exactly. So who does their job the best is how I define the best players. When you see all these lists of best players, that's the way I do it. Obviously, a lot of people disagree because, they rate the quarterbacks near the top, and some belong there, some don't. But as far as who does their job the best on the Philadelphia Eagles, AJ is he's number 2. Number 1 is Director of Joy, Reggie, the team dog. He does his job the best. Number 2 is AJ Brown. He does his job the best. He does. He's the best player on the Philadelphia Eagles.
Good to have A.J. Brown here. Good to know he's having another good camp. Obviously, I don't think anybody was concerned about that. Johnny Mac, let's talk Dallas Goedert now, moving over to the tight end. I'm excited for what Dallas Goedert could be this year in this Kellen Moore offense, John. I don't, people were ripping me again because this morning I said, I don't think he's overrated.
If they don't like what you said.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that I think he's overrated from a talent perspective, but his top campaign ever is 830 yards. I mean, that's
Can't
not
get caught up in the numbers. Can't get caught up. Look,
I know,
if he
but,
were
but
on,
from the
if he were
perspective
on
of
a
talking
different
about a top
team,
5 tight end, he hasn't played like a top 5 tight end in Philly. Maybe
yeah,
he
yeah,
is talent-wise.
yeah, yes, top 5, yeah, yes.
Mm.
I think, you know, and again, I think a lot of it depends on traffic. And look, when you have a 1,400-yard receiver and 1,100-yard receiver, you're not going to be a 1,000-yard receiver. So if he was in a more tight end centric offense like Baltimore, he'd
Yeah,
get
but that
that.
factors into being a top 5 tight end. I know it's
Well,
not
people's
Dallas Goedert's
minds,
fault, but it's the
not
same reason Devontae Smith's not a wide receiver 1.
not 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 in the eyes of the people that matter, his teammates, the coaches, the Eagles, what they're looking for. Um, you know, his position coach, Jason Michael, just spoke today, as a matter of fact, to us. And he just speaks in awe of Dallas Goedert. There's very few tight ends who can do both aspects of the job. That old school tight ends, guys who can play inline, can be meaningful receivers. It's a really small list, really small. And he's probably number 2 on that list behind George Kittle
Yeah.
as far as all around tight ends. And then the receiving aspect, part of it is he's got to stay healthy. Um, he hasn't played a full season in a while because he gets banged up. They haven't been drastic, 4 or 5 game injuries. You remember the broken glenoid bone in Chicago, which wasn't his fault. Now last year, sometimes he plays too physical for his own good, and he's trying to, stiff arm somebody, and he breaks his forearm and he's out. So, I mean, yeah, if you're worried about stats, he's probably not going to be top 5. Um, if you're worried about overall impact on the game, he's right there on the cusp of 5. If he's not 5, he's probably 6, maybe he's 4. Depending on what you're looking for. Some of these tight ends, there's 3 clear tight ends, and Kittle, Kelsey, Andrews. Is he in that group? Probably not. Maybe Sam Laporte is, if you want a receiver, a healthy TJ Hawkinson. But he's right in that group. He's a really, really good player.
Anyway, I think he's going to have a good year this year. What did you see from him today and just throughout training camp so far? But start with today. What did you see from Dallas Goedert today?
Well, he was a monster at the open practice at Lincoln Financial
3
Field.
tutties, yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to follow that up every
yeah.
practice. It just happened to work out that way. But yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys who CJ Gardner-Johnson matched up with him in one-on-one, and CJ had to leave afterwards. Made a great play, actually breaking up a pass, but wasn't a huge day impact play-wise for Dallas. But yeah, again, I mean, it's practice. It was one of those guys. Like if you put a list of Eagles to worry about, he's very low on that list. You don't even think about Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, other than the injury aspect, I would agree for sure.
Yeah, he's very low on the list. And hearing Jason Michael talk about him, his physicality is, he said it drips down in the room as a whole, and just the standard he plays. Yeah, he's a guy who, if anything, is underrated because, fantasy football numbers, which again, I mean,
I don't even play fantasy, so.
But I'm saying the number. It's like you and Nick has said this 100 times, and I've said it probably 1,000 times. And there's one football. I don't know. You can't expect 1,500 yards, 1,200 yards from the receivers, 1,000 yards from the tight end, 1,700 from the running back.
Yeah, it doesn't add up.
It's not realistic. Yes, it doesn't add up.
You think Dallas Goedert has a career year this year?
And what metric?
any of his metrics. His top yardage is 830. I think his top touchdowns is well under 10. You think he has a career year?
I think he has. I think he plays his consistent self in film work. I think the Eagles will be very happy at what he provides.
Yeah, but that's not my question, John. I know you think he's going to be the player. I get that. Do you think he has more production this year?
If he plays 17 games, but he hasn't played a full season since his rookie season when he was a part-time player. So, I mean, yeah, part of it's health. It's interesting. In 2021, he probably would have gotten 1,000 yards if he was healthy for the entire season. And then some may shut up about that, but he didn't. The big thing is last year he was less of an impactful yards after catch guy, because I think the offense was bogged down and unimaginative and stale, self-proclaimed stale. They need to get him back in catching the football in positions to where he can get those yards after catch. I do
agree.
expect
That's part
him.
of what I mean. I think Kellen's going to be great at getting him in the right positions and using his skill set the right way.
I do expect him to get more touchdowns than he typically does because he's never gotten a big touchdown number. And I think Kellen's already shown in one practice at Lincoln Financial Field he's more willing to use the tight end in the red zone. So, I think that number is going to go up. And who that impacts, people will probably be upset by that if that's the case, because it'll impact somebody else. But we'll see how that shakes out. If you win games, it doesn't matter, obviously.
Yeah.
But if you don't win games and, a certain someone isn't getting touchdowns because he's getting more touchdowns, that's why you can't worry about that stuff.
Yeah, especially when you have this much talent on the offense. A little bit different when you're working with as many good players as they have. John, let's move into I'm going to get to the offensive line, which a lot of people are waiting to hear about. But let's talk real quick on Saquon Barkley, or Saquon Barkley watch. What'd you see from Saquon down there at day 8 of practice?
Well, it wasn't a great day, but it wasn't his fault. Early on, he got caught for a safety in the backed up period. Jordan Davis just blew through the offensive line, and Jim Brown himself couldn't have gotten away from him. So, looked like it was tough to see from where we're standing. It was, I think it was Mackay getting blown up a little bit on the play. And, Jordan met him two yards in the end zone. He wasn't going anywhere. So that was one of the big impactful plays for the defense. And then the screenplay from Zach Bond that I opened with, that was also at the expense of Saquon. And again, not his fault. It was a misdirection screen. So you had all the bells and whistles that everybody wants to see. And it looked magical, except the linebacker knew exactly what was coming and met Saquon 3 yards in the backfield for a tackle for loss. So, not his fault, but not the best day for him.
John, let's go to that offensive line. Good to, not great, I guess, to hear that from Saquon, but it is what it is. You're not going to have a great day of practice every day at camp. Let's go to that offensive line, Johnny Mac. There's been a lot of moving parts on the offensive line, kind of uncharted territory for us in recent years here in Philly, talking about this much movement on the offensive line, this much potential uncertainty. What'd you see today from the offensive line? Who played? Who was in? Who was out? What was the rotation like? What'd you see from the offensive line?
It was a jumbled mess. First of all,
right.
it seemed like a good sign early because Mekhi Becton was back. He was sick on, I don't even know what day we are. Monday. He was sick on Sunday, and he was still listed as limited with the illness, but he did practice. He did do some team reps, but then he tapped out to Brett Toth. More on that later. And Tyler Steen was back, but only in individual drills. So he's getting closer. So that's a positive.
Yeah, it's
And
good
that'll
for
be
him.
interesting. Yeah, he's got to get back because
I was
he's
worried about him being, falling into no man's land there, just not
yeah,
being on
and
the field.
hopefully he'll be back out there tomorrow. We'll see how cautious they are with it. He'll certainly be back, at least doing individuals, I would imagine. So he's getting closer. So Mackay started at right guard. It's interesting. Lane Johnson was not listed on the injury update we're giving, and he worked through individual drills, but he did not participate in team drills. So either he tweaked the toe, he was dealing with a toe issue in individual, or they just gave him sort of a Veterans Day, and we'll get a better indication on that tomorrow morning. I think if they were going to give him a Veterans Day, they wouldn't have made him get in the pads in the 90+ degree heat. So
Right.
we'll see how that shakes out tomorrow. Fred Johnson was the right tackle in place of Lane. And then Cam Jurgens left late in the practice with a trainer, walked inside a little bit early. I'm told it's not serious. We'll get a better indication what he's dealing with. But at that point, Toth had to move over from right guard to center, and then Matt Hennessy took over at right guard. So, yeah, it's been a mishmash. Jason Kelsey was there today, so I thought maybe he'd jump in.
Yeah, really.
But that did not happen. Joking. Please don't think he's coming back. So yeah, it's been tough with all the moving parts on the interior of the offensive line specifically. So many different bodies, so many different players, and that's why you see perfect example of that safety I was talking about. Just Jordan destroyed the interior of the offensive line. So they're having some issues there right now.
Good stuff there from Johnny Mack. John, anything else on the offense? We ran through it all. We're going to take a commercial break, come back, and jump into the defense. But anything else on the offense today that we missed? Anything that
Johnny Wilson made a great play. It was a great play by Jalen Hurts. A great play by Johnny Wilson as well. And it was interesting that Jalen Hurts put him in a position. So it was a red zone drill. And Jalen put the ball purposefully behind him to keep him away from the defenders. And he was able to reach back and catch the football. Great catch, great throw, great play. So Johnny Wilson making some noise. It's always the big receiver that everybody likes. I'm not buying into he's going to be the third receiver crowd. But, if you need a big body in the red zone, he might be able to help. And
have you seen a little bit more from him, though? Because I remember when we first talked about him, you're like, look, he's just not ready. Do you think he's at least ready to, even if it's a small role, contribute to the team this year in this season?
Yeah, maybe in a smaller role. Yeah, I mean, if you need, as I said, as a blocker or as a red zone threat, that ran a nice route in one-on-ones to get away from, I think it was Ringo, so that was impressive because Kaylee's very athletic, and that's one of the knocks on Johnny, the fact that he's such a big body that maybe can't move as well
right.
as other receivers, which is true. But yeah, I think he can help in short spurts. And maybe, you don't feel as bad about the lack of depth for AJ and Devontae outside the numbers because he's playing a little bit better. But yeah, I wouldn't want to see him play 70 snaps. I'll tell you that. but I think he's got a lot of promise for a 6th-round pick, and he's way outplaying the guy who was picked in the 5th round, who keeps dropping the football, man. That poor guy has just lost his confidence.
Interesting to see what Johnny Wilson does. I'm excited for him. I think he's going to be a good contributor to the team, but we'll see what he ends up doing. We'll click more around on what happened at training camp today. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Good crowd tonight, Johnny Mac, on our nighttime edition of Birds 365. If you're in here and you're enjoying the show, make sure you drop a like, leave us a comment in the chat. I'm reading as many comments as I can. We appreciate all of you guys for doing that. Hopefully I didn't miss any super chats. No super chats. So if you guys drop a super chat, we will get to that. But let me tell you guys about our newest sponsor here on Birds 365, BetUS. We are proud to welcome BetUS to the network to sponsor Birds 365, to sponsor the National Football Show, and to be a proud partner of JAKIB Sports. So thank you to BetUS. I'm going to give you, are you looking for a new sports book this football season, everybody? BetUS is the answer, and JAKIB Sports is proud to announce our football partnership for the upcoming season with BetUS. Right now, receive a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, up to $2,000, and up to 200% sign-up bonus on any crypto deposits. If it's good for former Birds quarterback Michael Vick, it's definitely good for JAKIB Sports. So make sure you check out BetUS. I attached and pinned the comment that has the link to BetUS. The description is the link is also in the description. So if you want to check out BetUS, do it now. We'll be right back on Birds 365.
Michael Vick at BetUS.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sports book and casino.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Up. And go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
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 Welcome back in, everybody, to a nighttime edition of Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. Appreciate all you being here. Tonight's live stream presented by BetUS. Thanks to BetUS, our newest sponsor here on Birds 365. John, good breakdown there in the first 30, 40 minutes of the show. We're about 42 minutes deep. Good crowd tonight. We're going to dive into the defense now. We'll talk some what the players spoke after practice. A couple players spoke, so we'll get into all that. Let's go into the defense now, though, Johnny Mac. Before we get into specific players, positions, things, what stood out to you today on the defensive side of the football?
Making some more plays. So I mentioned the safety. I mentioned Zach Bond. N'Kobe had a nice blitz where he kind of blew up Will Shipley. Not a great day for Will Shipley on the rookie watch. He had been playing well, took a little bit of a step back today. I mentioned he was at fault on the pick six. Ball hit him right between the 3 and the 9. Just couldn't grasp it, and it turned into a tip ball and a touchdown for Sean Stevens, undrafted rookie free agent. But making some plays, and that's only the second interception we've seen from the defense this summer, which is rare in these types of environments. And they've both been reserves. Obviously, Jalen Hurts still hasn't been picked off this summer, as I mentioned. So to see him turn the football over was good. To see Jordan Davis dominating in a backed up period, that was good. To see Zach Bond continue to impress, and you start to see why the coaching staff likes him so much. That's good. Little bit of a step back, I would say, in the cornerbacks over recent days, though, and maybe that's just playing against AJ and Devontae. I mean, I think people forget when you talk about that competition between Isaiah Rodgers and Kaylee Ringo, which, I tried to get Vic to bite on when Cooper comes back, Cooper DeJean, if that impacts that competition, because at that point you would think they'd want to get Mitchell more outside reps, and then it becomes a whole new ball game. And basically said maybe, but we'll have to see where Cooper is when he's cleared. I still think ultimately Quignon's going to end up there at right corner, whether that's week 1 or week 4 or week 8. I think ultimately that's where they're going. But right now it seems like Isaiah Rodgers has started to create some space between himself and Kaylee Ringo over recent days. Ringo has not performed as well past few days, and Rodgers.
I wonder if he has that case of the practices, John, where you said he's just not a practice player, or at least
he wasn't last year. He was much better at the beginning of camp, but now he's starting to slide a little bit. So maybe that's part of it. Ultimately, he's still a good prospect. I'm
not hanging it up on him. I'm just saying, I wonder if, he is more of a game time type of guy, and that's going to hurt him, obviously, because Vic, you can't see games right now. So you're not going to get on the field. And then once you don't get on the field for the games, then you never have game film. So, you got to perform in practice. I just wonder if that's going to slow down him getting on the field.
Yeah. But I think people have gotten hyper focused on those two players, forgetting that Cooper's coming. It's amazing. It's like everybody forget he exists. It's one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And I'm not talking about the team, or I'm mainly talking about the media, to be honest, my cohorts. It's amazing. It's like the guy's not dead.
Out of sight, out of mind, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, right. He's going to be back. And when he's back, and Vic admitted today, look, if you take somebody in the first round to the drafted cornerback, he's got to play cornerback. And by that, he means outside cornerback, not slot. Now, the fact that he's been able to play slot and he's shown that versatility set as a very positive thing. But ultimately, he's going to land up. He's going to land outside, and ultimately, he's going to be the starting right corner. Maybe he's the left corner when Slay leaves, whenever that is. But for this year, he's going to be the starting right corner. It's just a matter of when. Week 1, week 4, week 8. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, so we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, Cooper going to be back hopefully soon. I did see a video. One of your beat reporter friends out there put it out. I just forget who it was. Sorry, I can't credit you, but I did see a video of him out there just kind of staying loose out on the field. So good to see that. Hopefully, Cooper
he's
gets back.
working out on a side field every day. That's not new. Every day he's been out there.
Yeah.
And he's rehabbing with Sidney Brown and Oren Burks. They rehab on a side field. So they're all, getting closer. In the case of Sidney, obviously a much more serious injury. But yeah, 3 weeks was the estimated time on Cooper DeJean. And camp started on the 24th, essentially. So we're 12 days in. So it's not the end of the world. He will be back. And when he is back, there might be a shift in that right cornerback battle.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens.
Not
there.
because of Cooper, by the way.
Yeah, because of other people shifting with Quignon and stuff like that. Yeah. So we'll continue to track that, obviously, on here on Birds 365. Thanks to everybody for being here. Look, good crowd tonight. Make sure you hit that like button, guys. I want to get to at least 100 likes on the live stream while we're live. I'm sure we'll get well over that after the show ends and more people watch the recording of the show. But I want to get to at least 100 from our people here in the chat. We appreciate all you guys being here. John, real quick, before I go into the position groups, what happened with CJ Gardner-Johnson today?
Don't know yet, but he was out there and he had a good rep in one-on-ones with Dallas Goedert. He was even celebrating, and all of a sudden he's gone and he's off the field. So, obviously he tweaked something. We'll see how serious it is tomorrow morning. I don't think it was terribly serious, but it did unveil how weak the Eagles are depth-wise at safety. James Bradbury came in to start opposite Reed Blankenship with the first team and also remember Mekhi Gardner's out as well. So you had 2 safeties down, and then all of a sudden, again, Bradbury's taking first team reps, and we didn't even think he'd be here at this point. We didn't think he'd be playing safety, and he's taking first. And by the way, he's looked pretty good. Smart, savvy player. And I warned Howie, and I hope Howie's listening. If you're listening, Howie, the longer he's here, the more Vic is going to like him because he knows how to play. He just knows how to play.
Smart guy, James Bradbury, and a good professional. We'll see what he can do at safety. John, we're approaching the territory where I'm not even sure James will be gone. Maybe I think when the domino would fall would be when Sidney Brown gets back, right? And then it's like, okay, now you're really either going to keep him or you're going to move him, and I think you'll find that out when Sidney gets back. So we'll see what happens there. But any update on Sidney? Probably looking at start of the year, or first 4 weeks or somewhere in that.
Yeah,
range.
well, he got injured on early January, 9 months. So
yeah,
but he looks. I talked to him multiple times. First, he thinks he can play right now, but that's an injury that needs a certain amount of time to heal properly, and you're gonna feel really good. Probably at the 7-month mark, especially somebody in the kind of shape that Sidney's in.
Yeah, he's built like a statue. Sidney Brown is in good shape.
Yeah, so he thinks he can play right now, and the Eagles are holding him back, and they should, and they tend to be cautious on that. And it's another one. Like we had that discussion with Cooper, which is much less serious. It's like 3 weeks versus 10 years if he turns into the player the Eagles think he's going to be is meaningless. Even 8 months versus 9 months, if Sidney Brown turns into the player the Eagles think he's going to turn into, it's not going to matter much.
Yeah, well, I'm not indicting their career. I mean, we're analyzing the here and the now, so I get it. You're right. 3 weeks for 9 years, or even 8 months for 9 years is nothing. But we got to analyze where we are right now, what they're going to do in 2024 and how it's going to impact the
Well,
season.
it's just, but from Howie's perspective, he's not going to panic because he's not going to be out with, it might take Cooper till week 3 or week
he's not going to
4.
go and get a long-term replacement
Exactly.
because these guys
he's
are
not
injured.
going out and getting Justin Simmons, what everybody wants, because CJ might be out for a couple days. He's not going to panic in that. That's where Howie takes advantage of people.
Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right. Let's get into that defense, John. For those just checking in, we spent the first 40 minutes of the show kind of really diving into the offense, not just today, but what John has seen throughout camp so far. Good breakdown on Jalen, AJ, Devontae, Dallas Goedert. So if you missed the beginning of the show, you'll be able to go back and watch it tonight. I have that going to have that show, that open of the show set to premiere. So we will do that. You can see that on later on the JAKIB Sports channel. Let's get into this defense, John. I'm going to start on the defensive line, and I want to start specifically on two guys, Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, the crux of the defense coming into the year. What did you see from those two guys today in practice?
Yeah, I mean, they're the foundations of this defense. Jalen's the best defensive player the Eagles have, Jalen Carter. And I don't think it's particularly close at this stage. And Jordan's a good player. It's just a matter of how many reps he can play at being a good player. That's the only question mark with Jordan Davis. And when you see him blow up running plays like he did today, I mean, I remember Pat Williams, for guys who remember him, and great nose tackle. Kevin Williams teamed up. They were called the Williams Wall. That defense led the NFL in rushing defense for 3 consecutive years. You couldn't move those guys it was unbelievable. And I don't think the Eagles are going to be that, but I see a talent level that's sort of consistent with that. And those guys, have to get, that's what it's been. That's what Vic Fangio has said from day one. Howie Roseman has said. Nick Sirianni has said. Clint Hurt has said. They got to get in condition. They got to be prepared to play 50-plus snaps. In the case of Jalen Carter, probably at least 40 for Jordan. And they got to play that 40th has got to be as good as the first. And if they can do that, the Eagles defense will reach their goals. I don't think they're talented enough in the back seven to be a top 5 defense or anything like that. But if those guys can reach that level, they'll be good enough to win with.
John, the big question, as you mentioned, on really Jordan, but also Jalen, who had a drop off last year, and that the whole team had a drop off, but Jalen did too. So you got to talk about it, is the conditioning. I know you're not going to see it all. I know you're not going to ever really be able to tell much when you're talking about hour-long practices compared to what it's going to be like in game speed. But have you seen anything, that would lead you to feel good or bad about where they are coming into the season?
Well, they're running these gassers in between sort of reps for the first team runs down to the opposite end zone when they're shifting off for the second team, and vice versa. They're trying, but no, you can't tell. I mean, you're always playing these increments of 5 reps, 6 reps at the most, and then you're coming off for the second team, and then the third team gets a few, and then the first team's back. You don't see these game-like environments where you're playing 70, 80 snaps. In the case of guys who never leave the field, like, it's different than defensive front people who are by nature rotational. But there's a few who never leave the field, and those are the guys. Are they going to be, those guys? Probably not. The Max Crosbys of the world. I don't expect that, but they got to play more. Jalen Carter's got to play Fletcher Cox level of snaps
and be effective.
And Jordan Davis has got to play not that much, but he's got to play significantly more than he has been playing. And he's got it's twofold for Jordan Davis, because he does have to show more as a pass rusher so he can play more in 4-man fronts. So that part is just, getting better. And then the other part is the conditioning and being able to do it. So, it's going to be a question mark until we see it. And it's going to be a question mark till late in the season.
Till the end.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't afford to have him drop off in the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season in the playoffs. So it's going to be, you're right. It's going to be something we're watching all year long. And in the modern NFL, there's just no way to replicate playing 70 snaps in a game, with the practice rules and stuff now. So there's just no way to see it, but we will continue to monitor it. Overall, I think it's positive. Some of the plays that they've been making that you heard John talk about. So we'll see what Jalen and Jordan are able to do this year. I'm hoping for big seasons from each of those two guys. John, let's talk real quick on Milton Williams. He got some love from Vic Fangio today, acting like, hey, I want to trade for that
Vic
guy down in Miami.
Yeah, trade for him.
Yeah. What'd you see from Milton Williams down there at practice today?
Nothing splashy, but Milton's just a solid player, and you saw it. Vic trying to convince Miami, and I continue to believe the Eagles probably want to get his contract extension done, but he's betting on himself, and he sees the opportunity for more playing time with Fletcher retiring, and this might be a situation where you get the extension later in November. I remember that's when the Eagles re-signed Dallas Goedert, who kind of bet on himself.
Right.
So it might be later in the process.
That's kind of that would be my guess. If they want to keep Milton here, they're not going to wait for the end of the season. I think it'd be right at that time.
Yeah, and he's got to do his part too for it to work. But you heard Vic believes in him, and Vic's not one to hand out compliments. As Bryce Huff knows, he'll tell you the truth. Told you the truth about Nakobe Dean.
Yeah, he did.
He's not one to hand out compliments, so it probably says something that he thinks Milton's a pretty good player.
Good stuff there from Milton Williams. John, let's go to the edge rushers. What'd you see from the edge rushers today in day 8 of practice? And then kind of overall what you've seen so far from the edge rushers and how they're developing. A lot of talk about Bryce Huff out here, Johnny Mac. A lot of talk about
and that all started with Vic, to be honest. That's where it all started. And that's
it was accentuated though by the reports that he really hasn't done a whole lot of anything in practice.
Well, yeah, but those reports you'll see started to come out after Vic said that.
Well, yeah, I mean, he put the spotlight on him.
Exactly. So, and by the way, don't stop being yourself, Vic, please. I love it. But
as a reporter, Johnny Mac.
That's where it all stemmed from. Look, I've said pretty consistently when Lane and Jordan are out there. Look, I mean, arguably 2 of the top 5 tackles in football. I mean, you're probably not going to do much against those players, as you've seen Nick Bosa, Micah Parsons,
right?
When DeMarcus Lawrence was making all pro teams, they didn't do much against Lane Johnson. And Jordan is getting close to that level. So, yeah, I don't really care if they're not dominating Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. I don't expect them to. And I'm talking about all the edge rushers. But certainly Bryce Huff, because people are hyper focused on him. I think he's going to be fine. Is he going to dominate some of the other great tackles if he plays Penei Sewell? Probably not. If he plays Christian Darrisaw, probably not. If he plays Tristan Wirfs, probably not. Guys like that. But if he plays the average tackles, the above average tackles, the below average tackles, he's going to start piling up the numbers that everybody loves, and everything's going to be fine. And that's how everybody does it. Even the great ones, even the Crosbys, the Parsons, the Bosas, that's how they do it.
Yeah, I mean,
with the possible exception of Myles Garrett, nobody can block that guy. But that's how everybody does it. So we were talking about the edge rushers today, me and a couple of reporters, and there are question marks about everybody on the edge. But I think as a group, it's one of the best groups on the Eagles. Now, if you want to go the pessimist route, and people say I'm a pessimist, which is interesting because I'm high on this group as a whole. Start about Huff. The obvious questions, Vic saying what he said. He hasn't shown up in practice. Sweat's coming off a bad year. Brandon's 36. Nolan Smith didn't do anything as a rookie. Question marks abound. But, I've seen from Nolan Smith exactly what I'm talking about. Like when Fred Johnson's out there, Nolan Smith makes plays. And that's fine. Hey, take advantage of it.
Yeah.
When Lane's out there, he doesn't make plays. Kind of common sense to me. And Josh is a good player. Maybe he's not as great as some people want him to be. Brandon, I talk about all the time. Brandon, everything about Brandon's about his age, and there's no evidence that's affected him. So it might only be 400 snaps. I think the Eagles should play him a little bit more. But why do you think he's not going to be effective in those 400 snaps? I don't know, but people seem to think it. So I think overall the group's going to be good. They're going to be fine. The strength, everything about this defense, when they have a bad day, the defensive front has a bad day. And when they have a good day, the defensive front dominates. That's their best group. And I'm including the edge rushers with the defensive tackles, as Vic explained today. So it's a good group overall.
John, I want to ask about Nolan Smith. I know what you just said. It makes sense. You're getting around Fred Johnson. He's not getting around Lane Johnson. That makes complete sense to me. But what have you seen from Nolan in terms of his development, in the fundamentals of being a pass rusher, his size? Has he grown into the NFL body a little bit more? What have you seen from Nolan Smith from that side of things?
Well, he's gained weight, but he's always, and Vic talked about this today, he's always going to be undersized for his position. I mean, he's not magically, turning into a 260-pound guy, and he's short. So his whole game is predicated on speed. There aren't too many 245-pound guys who can run a 4.39. So his whole game is predicated on speed. And that's fine. But, number one with Nolan Smith for me is his shoulder. Similar to the conditioning, we got to wait and see if it's fixed or if it's not fixed. If it's not fixed, I think you're going to have some issues.
Talk about a guy that put the spotlight on himself. You remember that? I'm sure you remember the comment he made last year.
God, sometimes I was there. We were all looking at it like, what the hell does that mean? My baby, sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. And most of last season, the baby wasn't working.
No.
You had to wear a harness and
Yeah.
So
That baby was on life support.
if that becomes a chronic issue, yeah, you're gonna have some problems with Nolan Smith long term. If it was just an injury that needed surgery and he's going to be back and he's bigger and he's stronger and he's as fast as ever, I think he's going to be a good player, at least in a rotational standpoint. And you still got other guys. Patrick Johnson the name keeps popping up. Everybody forgets him, but Vic seems to like him. Nick seems to like him. Jalix Hunt, who knows? Maybe he's a natural. I leave that door open. I think we're going to learn a lot about Jalix Hunt the preseason because I think he's going to play quite a bit.
Yeah, agreed.
And, maybe he's a natural and maybe he turns that corner in conversation and the room as a whole. But I have and maybe I'm wrong. Wouldn't be the first time. I have no concerns over Bryce Huff. I know he can rush the passer. I know it. I've seen it.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like that's what they want from him, John. Like they want that too, but it seems like they want him to be more of a 3-down guy, even just going back to Vic's first comments.
Of course they do, but that's always what you say when you're in training camp. You want everybody to turn into everything. You want everybody to turn into, when I talk about what we were talking about Dallas in the first hour, that's a well-rounded player. You want every tight end to turn into Dallas Goedert and be that well-rounded. Well, guess what? 95% of them aren't turning into that. So, but that doesn't
but wanting
mean
something is different than if their strategy was for him to be that player and he's
strategy.
not. Okay, that's fair. Okay,
they're paying him $17 million a year to get the quarterback. That's why they're paying him. Now, when they get to training camp, and that's why I was bringing up Jason Michael happened to talk about this today because we're talking about it. It's like, I want everybody to be Dallas Goedert, but everybody can't be Dallas Goedert. And you got to piecemeal what they do well and build a group up that way. So when you're Vic Fangio and you're in training camp, you want Bryce Huff to set the edge and you want him to be that flat defender and drop in coverage. And guess what? He's getting better at that. He almost had an interception in at the link practice, but he's never going to be great at it. And he's never going to be great setting the edge. And guess what? Neither was Hassan Reddick. And nobody cared because he got the quarterback. And this guy's going to get the quarterback. And I think everybody's going to be fine.
He better get the quarterback, John. I'll tell you that. He better get to the quarterback. So let's hope he's able to do that. John, let's move over into the linebacker position. Boy, this is getting a lot of talk. It seems like each day that goes by, there's more and more questions that are coming at the linebacker position. To this morning, they made a signing. I don't think much, didn't think much of it. Seems like a special teams type of player, not a guy that's going to make an impact at being a starting linebacker on the team, but going to the starting linebackers. What did you see from them today?
Big Zach Bond day. Yeah.
Another one. I mean, Nakobe Dean, he's nowhere to be found, but Zach Bond's name keeps popping up.
Nakobe blew up, as I said, on Will Shipley on a blitz.
Guess he did have a good play today. Good stuff.
Nakobe is fine when he's going downhill. He's a pretty good run defender, pretty instinctive, good blitzer, which Vic doesn't do a lot. So I don't know how impactful that is.
Yeah.
But he is lost in coverage. I mean, he is lost. He can't cover anybody. Today was
and didn't Vic kind of comment on that today? Hey, I need, to be a good linebacker, you got to be more than instinctive. You got to be able to cover. And Kobe's not doing great at that.
He is not, but I don't think they have any good coverage linebackers. So,
which is
a
problem, especially after you listen to Vic Fangio.
Yeah, from that standpoint, I mean, I don't know. is I mean, Devin's athletic and everybody defaults to that. He can certainly run with people. But he's never shown a great ability to do it at a high level in Tampa Bay, at least consistently. Zach is just learning the position. A lot of positives, certainly, from the standpoint of, he's typically more of an edge defender than a off-ball linebacker, and he's holding up pretty well. Obviously Trotter is a rookie. Van Sumeren is athletic, but very little experience. And yeah, I mean, there are no Fred Warners out there. And yeah, it was interesting that Vic was talking, because he was talking about the Hall of Fame and Patrick Willis, who's, one of the great linebackers he used to coach. I don't see a fix on this particular roster at this stage.
You think they'll add somebody, John?
No, I don't. I think for now they're happy with Devin White. It seems, at least. Yeah, I mean, and if it is, it's going to be the Shaq Leonard, who's a little bit better than Shaq Quarterman.
Is Devin going to be your Mike? Is he going to be your Mike linebacker?
Yeah. It was interesting. They gave both green dots at Lincoln Financial Field, he and Zach Ballin. So I guess they're still deciding. And Nakobe does it obviously with the second team, and Ben's been doing it at times with the third team. So everybody's getting a chance, and Trotter's a natural instinctive player, so I'm sure he's gotten a chance as well, but maybe they held it back because he's a rookie. I don't mind the depth. You just don't have any starters, if that makes sense. Like, I think you got a bunch of good backup linebackers.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. It's backwards, but it makes sense what you're saying.
Yeah, I think your depth is fine. I think your starters are an issue.
I don't know why, if you say that, why they wouldn't go out and get somebody. I mean, maybe it's too late.
Who can you get?
Yeah,
I mean, that ship has sailed. You might as well go with the guys who've learned the system or a little bit ahead. Last year they did it, and you're going to get the Zach Cunningham types. It was okay. You're not going to get a difference maker. That's where you got to go in the draft or free agency, and you got to decide to spend some valuable assets, be it money or draft capital, and they didn't do it. That's gone. The barn door is closed on that. Now you're back to, Walmart clearance aisle shopping.
Yeah, Sam Fleming says it right. Free agent linebacker will not come in and be starting level. It'd have to come through a trade, and even in the trade market, I don't anticipate Howie Roseman giving up some premium pick to bring in a linebacker that he's going to have to pay money to. So that's not happening either.
You're hitching their wagon on Devin White. It's interesting. I'll say that.
What about Nakobe? That was what you said earlier, that they're hitching it on Nakobe Dean too. Is that?
Well, I don't know. I think Howie would like to, but I don't know if Vic's on board with that.
It doesn't seem like he is at all.
Yeah. I think if we're up to Howie, I think Nakobe would get one more opportunity to be the guy. And I think from Vic's perspective, Devin White is the guy, which is, I don't know.
Good stuff, Johnny Mack. It'll be interesting to see what they end up doing at that position. John, let's move to the back end, but I don't want to go corner first. Let's go safety first. CJ went down. You talked about Bradbury. Reed Blankenship, how's he looked? What have you seen from the safeties today at camp and then just overall the last couple of days?
Well, as I said, CJ came out. I mean, Reed's just solid. You know, they played, and Vic got asked this. You know, it's impossible to go back. You know, you don't have to film unless you're doing it from day one. But I would bet 90% too high safety is where the Eagles start in practice. And Vic was asked about that today, and he said, we play a lot of single high as well. Well, not in practice. So maybe that changes in the real games, because in practice, those guys have been playing in the parking lot. So, and that is part of the reason why they don't have a lot of interceptions or, you know, those types of plays. And Vic talked about Jalen taking good care of the football as well. So that's a part of it. But, you know, he's throwing it underneath and they're giving it up underneath, which everyone's going to love if that continues as they loved in the past. Trying to, you know, limit big plays. And that's what this defense is about. And they've been more cautious than ever under Vic. And maybe that changes in because his reputation is that you know, he's a great situational play caller. So if it's 3rd and 13, he's going to get aggressive and he's going to get the football out of the quarterback's hands, and you know, you rally up and you tackle and you get off the field. So he tends to have a good feel for that. And we'll see how it shakes out. But in practice, where you're not trying to do that kind of stuff, it's very, very cautious.
Good stuff, John. We're going to go to a super chat here from James Carver, our man James. James, thanks for the super chat, brother. We appreciate you. Appreciate your support of the network as always. 1999. Thank you, James. Given average snaps per game, do you expect Vic to want JD and JC to have similar numbers this year? Presser sounded like that, but aside from Dexter at 44, top nose tackles averaged about 40, while top 3 techs were around 44.
No, yeah, Jalen's
aside
going to
from
play.
people like Donald at 56.
Yeah. Jalen's going to play more than Jordan. Yeah, Jalen's got to be, as I said, at Fletcher, Cox like levels. And Jordan's got to be significantly up. So, you know, last year was somewhat similar. Jalen was at 599. Jordan was at 561. And, you know, that's Jalen Carter's the one that's got to go up dramatically. And if you look at Fletcher Cox, you know, last year is at 721, but that's if you look at his career, he's been over 900 in his prime, and that's where they want Jalen Carter to go. So they don't want him in Fletcher like last year. They want him in Fletcher prime territory, and Jordan's got to play. Not even that much more, but he's got to play more effectively. So he's got to be prepared. He's got to play more, but he's got to be effective with those snaps. And he wasn't necessarily effective. You know, if you take those 560 snaps or whatever it was, you know, the first 300 were great. And then you had the fall off. And it's got to be consistently good. And we'll see if those guys can do it. Easier said than done. But, you know, so if you look at Fletcher, 978 was his career high. 926, 887, 831. He's been over 800 a bunch. That's where Jalen Carter's got to be.
We'll see what they're able to do. I think Carter's going to be good. Davis is the bigger question for me, but we'll see. Hopefully, both of those guys can have a good year this year. The defense is counting on them in a big way. So, John, let's wrap up this defense talk here on the cornerback position. It's been one of the most talked about, debated, discussed positions on the defense coming into camp. With Quinyon, with Cooper, with all the moving parts, with the young guys, Isaiah Rodgers. What did you see today from the cornerbacks at day 8 of training camp practice?
A little bit of a step back. I don't think the past couple days they haven't been as effective. I think Ringo's taken a step back. I think Rodgers has taken a step back, but I think Ringo's step back has been bigger, so it doesn't look as bad with Rodgers. I think Quinyon's taken a step back over the past couple days. And yeah, there's going to be some growing pains, as I mentioned. Very young group. But I think they're all great prospects. I just think, for the group that's expecting them to all be great at the day one, I mean, that's a little unrealistic. So it's not a surprise. They're much more talented as a whole at the cornerback position. Much deeper, much better prepared to handle if they suffer injuries and things like that. But I would think the group as a whole has taken a step back over the past few days, specifically those 3 guys, because that's where the focus has been. And that's why I want Cooper DeJean back if I'm the Eagles, because I want to get Quinyon Mitchell outside. It's great. It's like,
learning the position is great for him as a player, but like we need this guy to be an outside cornerback. Is that?
Yeah, I keep going back, and I believe this to my core. If Sean Desai did what Vic's doing with Quinyon Mitchell, people would be upset.
People would be going crazy probably. The reporters would be writing about it. That we would be talking about it on Birds. Everybody would be. Yeah, I think you're right. I think Vic has earned that right, and it's that's why the conversation is what it's been.
Yeah. And, I think they want to get their best 3 on the field against Green Bay to win week 1. And I think that's why they're doing it. I would have went a different route, and I would have said, let those guys compete for the right corner spot and, make do with Avonte Maddox or Tyler Hall in the slot. That's how I would have went about it. But they want to get their 3 best on the field, and it looks like it's going to be Slay, Rodgers, and Mitchell to start, with Mitchell in the slot. I don't like it.
We'll see what they end up doing. John, we're going to get our next commercial break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the press conferences with the players. We'll talk about a couple more things. I want to ask you about C.J. Gardner-Johnson, what he said to say. Did he speak today, or was he yesterday?
That was yesterday. That was
okay. Yeah, we didn't talk about it. We didn't have a long show yesterday, but it was pretty funny. A couple people loved it. A couple people hated it. I wanted to get your take on it, so we'll talk about that and more. But before we do that, I want to tell everybody about our newest sponsor, BetUS. We are proud to welcome BetUS to the network as a newest sponsor of JAKIB Sports and on here on Birds 365. So big shout out to BetUS. You see the logo on the screen, the pinned comment in the chat, and I'll pin the comment after the show below. Make sure you guys check out BetUS and click that. Are you looking for a new sports book this football season? BetUS is the answer, and JAKIB Sports is proud to announce our new football partnership for the upcoming season. Right now, receive a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, up to $2,000. And I love this one, up to 200% deposit on any crypto deposit bonuses. So good stuff if you're depositing crypto up to 200%. So good stuff there. If it's good for former Birds quarterback Michael Vick, it's good for JAKIB Sports. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. Make sure you guys click that link in the description or in the comment as it credits JAKIB Sports. So if you want to sign up for BetUS, if you want to check them out, make sure you do that through our link. We appreciate that. We'll take a commercial break, and we'll be right back on Birds 365.
Michael Vick at BetUS.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sportsbook and casino.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your greenhouse? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to this nighttime edition of Bird 365 presented by BetUS, our newest sponsor. Thanks to BetUS. Go and check them out today at our link. Johnny Mac, let's get into some of these press conferences, man. We only have about 30 minutes left to go on the show tonight. Flew by. Welcome and thank everybody for all of our viewers, all the comments, the likes, the support, the super chats. We appreciate each and every one of you guys. John, let's talk press conferences. I know a couple players spoke today. Saquon spoke today. Vic Fangio spoke, which we already kind of hit on at the top of the show. But before we go into today's, let's touch on C.J. Gardner-Johnson's. What was your overall initial reaction to how C.J. Gardner-Johnson handled his press conference?
Yeah, I've known CJ, so it didn't surprise me. It's weird. I'll say that. Yeah, he's an interesting guy because, when he was here the first time, there are days where, he was like your best friend and all, and then there are other days where it was like, he's not talking to anybody. And then eventually, when he got hurt, he kind of shut it all down. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. And it's funny because I think a lot of, he's like, I've been okay when you all told me I was obnoxious. I'm like, hey, he was the one who said it was obnoxious when he sort of criticized the Eagles fans and things like that, and admits to being it. And that is like, I don't think I've ever met anyone from a media perspective who said CJ wasn't a good player. Like, I think most people say, there's injury concerns. In fact, I think there's some media people that overrate him a little bit because he's such a playmaker. Like,
I
he
agree.
makes a lot of plays, but, he's also takes some chances. Very similar to Trayvon Diggs in Dallas. Like, well, when you make that many plays, you're probably giving up some plays. But I don't know. In his mentality, and that's one of my pet peeves with fans is that a lot of them say the media, like we're all the same. Whereas if you saw the people asking questions in that press conference, from me to McLean to Brookie to Berman, on and on. Chris Franklin, I think, was there. Brooks was there. We don't meet to talk about CJ Gardner-Johnson. We don't meet at Chickies and Pete's to talk about insert name, when fans think we're criticizing someone they don't want us to criticize or whatever. So I don't know. I don't know what his deal is, but he's a good player. So, I mean, you got to put up with it. And I don't know. He thinks we're out to get him. I don't know. I can't tell you why.
What do you think it's warranted? Do you think it's, I don't know. I
think
kind of
it's-
feel like
I
he
think
plays the victim role a little bit. Like, I don't,
I think it's
I
not.
never really feel like
I think the vast majority of us think he's a good player. And some of us think he's a better player than he probably is. Especially after looking at this team last year and what he meant to it. I literally don't know any of those guys who think he's a bad player.
Well, listen, if you're going to be the type of player, and I have no problem with it, but just my analysis on it, if you're going to be the type of player that gets in the face of Tom Brady and loves to do those type of things, you have to take the good with the bad. If you don't want articles or things being written about you that might say you're this type of player, well, then don't be that guy. But don't do it and then cry.
Oh,
about it.
yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous. One of his quotes, I'm pulling up the transcript I have. The way I play football, y'all admire guys that was just like me 10 years ago. Ed Reed, Sean Taylor, Ray Lewis, Sue.
That's some
He
high
brought up
company you're putting yourself with.
he brought up, well, beyond that, some of those guys. Ed's a Hall of Famer. Sean obviously was tragically murdered, would have been a Hall of Famer, most likely was all on a Hall of Fame trajectory. Ray Lewis, Hall of Famer, and Dominican Sue, we'll see. He's certainly on the cusp, and he was here. But the list goes on to players who were feisty, passionate, didn't take no shit. That's me. Sue didn't take no shit. The guy got suspended 100 times for kicking people in the head. And are you kidding me? I mean, there's nothing about that press conference that made any sense. Any sense. But he can play. He can make plays.
Yeah, but yeah, I know he can play, but here's the other thing I would say. And look, I like Gardner-Johnson. I don't want people to think I'm hating on him. I like the player. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's great. I think he's good. I don't think he's a great player. I think he's a good, solid player. But if you're going to talk like that, and you're going to, and even on the field, forget talking to the media. If you're going to talk on the field and you're going to, yell at the defense when something goes wrong, which again, I don't have a problem with. I think it's good to have someone who holds everybody accountable out there. You better be on the field and play. And you better play up to your potential as a player and up to the standard that you're setting for everybody else. Because these are grown men. These are professionals. They're going to check you out real quick if you're playing 2 or 3 games a year or you're making just as many mistakes as everybody else. So if you're going to talk like that, you got to walk the walk too. And I would urge CJ Gardner-Johnson to make sure he does that this year. if he wants everybody.
Well,
to
he's got a
continue.
lot of confidence in himself, and he
Which is
has,
great. I think confidence is great. I don't have a problem with
and
it. But
when he has been on winning teams, and going back to um, Florida, and obviously, was in the Super Bowl here, and he got the Lions, who haven't, as he pointed out, haven't won anything, and all of a sudden, but he played 3 games last year. Come on, dude, you don't have anything to do with that. I mean, talking about Eden Hutchinson played 1,100 snaps. He got something to do with that. Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, those guys. Yeah, I he is who he is. I said it the first time. I'll say it again. He's going to be like that some days. Other days, he's going to be fine. And I'm going to treat him the same way, either way.
Yep, fair, and that's what you should do as a reporter, and that's why we love you, Johnny Mac. So good stuff there. Anyway, again, just the closing thoughts on CJ. I don't have a problem with it, but boy, you better walk the walk. You want to talk like that, and look, I'm good with it. It's cool. Every defense could use a guy that has unwavering confidence in themselves and wants to stir the pot and get in the face of Brady. But listen, you better back it up, and I'm good with it as long as he backs it up. So we'll see what he's able to do. John, let's go into the press conferences today. What stood out to you from who spoke today down at training camp?
Oh, boy. Who'd we talk to today? Devin White was out there. Zach Bond was out there. It was a big Zach Bond day. Saquon had a book club. He talked today, talking about the book he's reading.
I'm kind of interested in that book. Got to be honest a little bit.
I kind of tuned out. I got to be honest with the book club talk. I didn't know where people. I kind of got to Saquon a little bit late. I don't know where people.
You know who loves that, John? Not taking a shot at him, but Zach Berman, the reporter, he loves stuff like that. He loves talking about the stuff that's not all on the field with the players, which is good. There's a good role. There's a role for it.
Yeah,
I like it. But yeah, he does love
there's a role for it. No doubt about it. But yeah, I mean, I think to me, Zach was the best one. Zach Bond. I asked him. He made the great play I mentioned where he snipped out the misdirection screen, and he's talking about eye discipline, and that was a perfect example of eye discipline. Like, he didn't bite. We've been talking about that because of Kellen Moore, and everybody wants motion and eye candy and eye wash and all that. And if you're disciplined, it doesn't matter. It's just white noise. And I thought it was interesting because he said, he took credit. It was a great play. He was very disciplined. He did blow it up. If that were in a game, you'd be very excited to see it. If it were against the opposition. And then he brought up a bad play when he had bad eyes, and he gave up a touchdown on a naked bootleg in a red zone period, and he took accountability for it. So I think the Eagles may have lucked out with Zach Bond. Everybody seems to like him, as I mentioned. Not only Vic Fangio, but I think Howie signed him to be an edge player.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he might be your starting off-ball linebacker. So that's one of those things that, sometimes maybe it turns out it's better to be lucky than good. Victory favors the fearless. How to defeat the 7 fears that hold you back. That was the book club, by the way, if anybody's interested.
That was the Saquon Barkley book he was talking about. Good stuff there. The Zach Bond talk, is that a credit to Zach Bond, or is that an indictment on the linebackers that we have on the roster?
Yeah, you can make a good argument. Haven't seen many plays like that, like he made today by the linebackers. So, it was, as I said, there was a good play from N'Kobe on a blitz, but to actually snip something out like that, not just going straight ahead, because, guys can make plays. Like Devin White can make plays going straight ahead. I mean, he's a tremendous athlete, but is he going to be able to snip things out like that? Is he going to be able to be disciplined like that? And I don't even know if Zach Bond is going to be long term, because again, he made a mistake, and which he admitted to, which I found interesting, to bring it up himself and take accountability, I think is a good thing. So, but overall, yeah, I'd be lying to you if I said I thought the Eagles were in a good situation at linebacker.
Yeah, we ran through that enough. John, any other things to hit on here on the press conferences of players who spoke? Anything that stood out to you? Anything worth noting here for our listeners on the show about the press conferences today?
Well, victory favors the fearless. We got Oprah book club stuff.
Johnny Mac is completely checked out on the book club talk. John wants
I completely checked out. But then our buddy Jeff Kerr asked him a Penn State question. So then I even
come on. Is that a rippable offense on Birds?
Oh yeah, I ripped him right afterwards. And he was wearing a Penn State hat.
Of course he was. Jeff Kerr down there. I'm gonna call Jeff the brown noser. He's down there brown. He knew Saquon was talking, and he puts on his Penn State
I don't
cap
think
in
he
the
did.
morning.
I'm not now. Yeah, I don't think he did, but he shouldn't be wearing it anyway. Come on, Jeff. Come on, buddy.
He's getting in, John. He's getting in. He's getting the stories. He's doing what he's got to do to make the headlines, to make the content.
Well, the other guys can have the book story. I'm giving that up to them.
I'm okay with you giving up the book story, Johnny Mac. I don't think that's something that we need. But hey, maybe I'll read that book. I wonder if anybody else in the chat's interested in the book. Probably not. I don't know. Are any of you guys?
You never know. There's some,
any of you guys readers?
Nothing wrong with it.
No, there's nothing wrong with it. No, I thought the book sounded good. Like I said, I think I'd buy it. I think I might go and might chat GPT the overall the cliff notes of it.
Yeah. Teron Davenport, who used to cover the Eagles before Billy Guide, now covers the Titans. We were the requisite football guys, and like we would roll our eyes when we got the TV questions or the book club questions, or we're here for football. Come on, guys. Come on.
Yeah, no doubt about it. John, another question here. Good one here before we get to our last break. J Mac, how's the calf? John, how's the calf holding up?
Today was not a good day, man. It was brutal. First of all, it was, very hot. The hottest practice of summer. It was a long practice by Eagles standards. Plus, I'm going back to back. No time to regenerate the calf. So
do you have an ice pack on the calf as we speak, Johnny Mac?
I don't. I should, but I don't. As soon as I get off, it's going back on. But I probably should have. I was running late, so I didn't have time to situate everything correctly.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. Been a good breakdown so far. Just about 15 minutes left on our show tonight. We're going to take one more break. Before we do that, though, just closing out. We talked about the press conferences. Just one more comment on Vic Fangio and what he had to say today. He obviously, he always makes good commentary. What did you take away overall from what Vic said for those who missed the start of the show?
Oh, no. That was
what did he say that to?
Let me pull it up.
It was the Brooks Cabina question, right?
Yeah. He was asking about last week when Vic. It was the weirdest part of he was talking about analytics. He got asked about analytics, and he said he never shares them. He does his own analytics and he never shares them, even with his own coaches. And Brooks asked a follow-up to that and said, what's the thought process between keeping that proprietary information secret and could you expand on it essentially in one word answer. No.
Yeah, Vic Fangio is not letting anybody in. What'd you make of his comments on Bryce Huff?
I think he got talked to and said scale it back, and I think that's the best he can do to scale it back, which is.
Do you think he got talked to? I was wondering if he would. I thought he would, but I didn't know. Maybe like when you're Vic Fangio, I don't know. Maybe you ride above that stuff.
Oh, they all get talked to, but like CJ. I mean, they talk to CJ all the time, and then he goes up and he does what he does. Yeah, I mean, I saw guys talking to CJ before he came up, and that was the result. So yeah, I mean, Vic gets talked to. Everybody gets talked to. So here's I found the question. You mentioned your analytics that you kept to yourself. Can you explain the proprietary nature of those kinds of things when coaches are learning from you? So in essence, why the hell don't you help your own coaches? And his answer to that was no, which I found hilarious, just to me, but I think it's hilarious.
Absolutely. Definitely is hilarious. Good stuff, Johnny Mac. We're going to take one more quick commercial break here. Real quick, any other thoughts on the pressers before we wrap up this segment?
By the way, on Bryce Huff, he said it's getting better. He's working very hard at it. He's very prideful in it. He's improving.
Yeah, boy, that is. I got talked to, and let me make sure I talk up your new $51 million man.
Yeah, but that's not exactly glowing praise. So he did the best he could, I guess. But yeah, he's not a guy who's going to bullshit you, which I have tremendous respect for.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. We'll come back, take our closing thoughts on the day. Day 8, practice number 8 of training camp is in the books. Eagles moving into day 3 of their 4-day run from Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So tomorrow night, for those asking, yes, we will have another nighttime edition of Birds 365. Tomorrow we'll be live at 8 a.m. with the football 24/7. I'll try and get John for 15 minutes by phone. But yes, nightcap again tomorrow of Birds 365. So stay tuned, everybody. We'll come back and we will wrap up this Monday edition of Birds 365. Back in a minute.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
the greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Monday edition of Birds 365, nightcap edition, special nighttime edition. After day 8 of training camp, Johnny Mac was down there, obviously, as he always is, for the Birds training camp practice number 8. John, about 6 or 7 minutes to go left here on the show tonight. Any final thoughts from you on this last 7 minutes you want to get into from what you saw at the camp today? I think we recapped it pretty good. But any standout players? I'll get your player of the day in the last 3 minutes.
Boy, I got to think about my player of the day. I got to mull that over. Yeah, Devontae, getting matched up with Reed Blankenship. That's got to be something that can't happen. James Bradbury taking over at safety. That was interesting. Hopefully the injuries to Cam Jurgens and CJ Gardner-Johnson are very minor. Obviously, they're probably not going to play in the preseason game. I guess the preseason game, Big sort of intimated that he wouldn't mind having guys playing the preseason game. And that's kind of, obviously that's a head coach decision. And maybe the defense is a little bit different than the offense because they probably need it more on defense than they do on offense. And the problem is that the offense, if you're going to play the quarterback, you got to play the offensive line because you're not going to put Jalen Hurts behind, the Matt Hennessy's of the world and risk him getting injured in a preseason environment. So that means, Lane's got to be healthy. Landon's got to be healthy. Cam's got to be healthy. Maybe they piecemeal it. Maybe you don't see a lot of the offensive players, which is a much more concrete unit than defensive where they got to figure some stuff out.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. We're going to get to our player of the day, but I'm excited by Johnny Wilson, John. I've continued.
Johnny Wilson.
I'm excited to hear. I'm excited to see what he's able to do. Or maybe he's just a tall camp darling that there always is every single
Always
year.
is, baby. Carlton Agudosi, Femi Moma. People in Philadelphia love a tall receiver.
Yes, they do. Is that what he is?
And Johnny is 6'6", 238 pounds, to the point that, I shouldn't say most. A lot of people projected that he would turn into a tight end. Who knows? Maybe he will one day. The Eagles, however, never looked at him as a tight end. I don't know if he's got enough speed and separation ability to be a big-time NFL receiver, but I think he could help as a deeper receiver who sort of does certain things like Zach Pascal. Can he use that big frame to block? Can he play in the red zone? I think he's got a chance to turn into a solid role player. But one thing about NFL receivers, I do not like contested catch guys. If you can't get separation in the NFL, it's going to be tough to be a star. So I think he's got a chance to be a good role player.
Good stuff there from Johnny Mac. John, last question here. Who's your player of the day at Eagles training camp today?
Well, you can, I say this all the time, but I almost take AJ and Devontae out of it because
you could pick them every day if you want.
It's boring. So I'm going to go with I'm going to go defense and give the defense some love, and I'm going to go Zach Bond. I'm going to go. He was pretty impressive. Great play. I wish people could see it. Snipping out, missed a bunch of bells and whistles. So, that's the kind of stuff that can fool people if you're not being disciplined. And he snipped it out like it was Luke Kuechly. He knew what was coming. And as soon as Saquon caught the ball, he was on him. And if it were a game, it would have been a fumble or an incomplete pass. He would have blown him up. So I'm going to go Zach Bond.
Good stuff from Johnny Mac. John, great show today. That's going to do it for their nighttime edition of Birds 365. Going to get out of here a minute or two early, but that's all right. Let me thank real quick BetUS. Thank you to BetUS for sponsoring the live stream and our video tonight, our episode of Birds 365. If you'd like to sign up for BetUS, use the link in the description or the pinned comment in the chat. So thank you to BetUS. Johnny Mac, great show tonight. Thank you to all of our chatters, all of our commenters for being here. I appreciate all you guys. Make sure you smash that like button on the way out. Johnny Mac, good stuff. We'll talk to you tomorrow. All right, man.
All right. Thanks, Zander. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you tomorrow on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.